Okay, so that was some of the successes, the triumphs of ufology. But Stan, what about the blunders? What about the things that aren't so great in ufology?
Well, I'm still disturbed that many ufologists who will attack one thing or another do so without doing their homework. You need to get first-hand data. You need to go to archives. You need to find first-hand witnesses. This has come up with regard to MJ-12, but there are a lot of other things. You got to find somebody who was there. I called the Truman Library, found George Elsey. He worked for Truman the entire time he was in the White House. He was extremely helpful when I sent him the documents and asked his opinion. He was there. He had things to tell me nobody else could have told me. And we don't do enough of that. We sit and theorize off to the side kind of thing. I have had people give me a hard time about Don Menzel. But as far as I can tell, none of them have gone to the Harvard archives to look at his papers. They're there. I didn't put them there. I discovered them there.
Right.
And I was shocked. I certainly was not a pro-Menzel person when I started that book. I had one run-in with him, and I obviously didn't like him, and he didn't like me, as far as I could tell. So I think we have not been vigorous enough in pursuing our research. And so many of the arguments have been false. This crazy notion that, in the case of MJ-12, you can point to something specific. It's been stated that Hillenkoetter is listed as Admiral Hillenkoetter. It was really only a vice admiral or a rear admiral. So obviously it's a phony document, without pointing out that the same document gives all the military people with their generic ranks.
Yes, right.
I mean, that was standard practice. I checked with 2 different archives. It's standard practice to use admiral and general, even though you might mean rear admiral, vice admiral, or lieutenant general, or brigadier general, or whatever. In government documents, it shows up all the time. I found loads of them at the Eisenhower Library.
Well, it's like professor. People are often an assistant professor and an associate professor,
Yeah,
but they're
exactly.
usually just called professor.
Yeah, you can answer the phone, Colonel Jones. You can't sign something, Colonel, if you're a lieutenant colonel. And that's the way this situation works. So people made a big deal about that for no good reason at all, without doing their homework.
Homework's important. Everybody hates homework, though.
Well, I'm sorry, but if you're going to make a pronouncement, don't do your research by proclamation, because it seems this way to you without verifying the facts. And we have to be rigorous in it. I mean, how many people are calling to task the SETI people who will talk about maybe there's somebody 1,000 light years away, or they'd have to come from thousands of light years away? What's the basis for that? There isn't any. We don't know how many, we have a good handle on how many stars there are out there because we can see them. And with the Kepler we can say, hey, it's very likely that a whole host of these have planets, and that some of those are appropriate for life, for the development of life. And remember, we can be talking about a civilization that colonized, migrated.
Right.
I've asked audience, how many of you had your ancestors 4 generations back living here? It's not all the people in the audience. Mine certainly weren't. My grandparents were all immigrants. So can we not expect people will colonize planets?
So what I'm hearing you saying is that that ufologists aren't really doing their research and asking the questions anymore. They seem to be just accepting things or having an opinion.
Or rejecting.
Or rejecting.
Yes.
Accepting or rejecting without any basis.
Yes, maybe it's just because I'm old and cranky, but I just see an awful lot of that.
I'm getting old and cranky too. Let's start another one.